welcome to this week's Scan Pro Audio webcast. It's getting close to Christmas, so with some goodies here that it might just be able to tempt you. We have with us the ever-gorgeous Mr. Luke Fromkorg. His real name's Luke Edwards, but he's actually going to change it by default to Luke Fromkorg, because that's all anyone ever calls him. But he's brought with him some absolutely wonderful little bits of kit here, and we have just been, while we've been setting up, listening to this Electribe unit going, wow, that really sounds a lot different than it looks. So without further ado, we're going to hand over to Luke. We've got, as usual, some incredible prices for you tonight. If you email us after the show with the special word, which tonight might be finger blast. But if you email us with the special word, we will email you by return with some very special prices. But for now, we'll go to titles, and then we'll hand over to Luke with these rather wonderful little machines.
Hi, it's Luke Fromkorg here, and today I'm going to be showing you a brand new Electribe and of course the Volca sample as well. So very excited to be able to show you these, really for my first time on camera showing these, certainly live. And I'm going to start off with the Electribe. So this is the latest incarnation of our very successful Electribe series, and it's definitely been due for a kind of a refresh, and very different look for us and a very different sound as well. The sound engine inside is derived from three places mainly. The original Electribes, there's a little bit of flavour from those. There's a lot of processing in here from our King Korg, our flagship synth, plus we've taken some of the waveforms from one of our very successful apps, which is a Gadget as well. And we've kind of put them all in the mix and developed some new ones as well. And then we've got this amazing sound engine in terms of what you can do inside. Just to make you aware about the Electribe series, there's actually two models. This is the synth version, if you like, the EMX, but there's also the ESX, which is going to be shipping a little bit later, so early next year. Look out for that one. That's a sampler. This one is just a pure synth, and it's great for making your patterns. So I'm just going to talk you through it using some of the presets and then just explaining some of the features inside. So first of all, there's 200 patterns straight out of the factory, and of course you can save your own user patterns as well. And let's just have a listen to a couple of them. So I'm going to press play, and it's going to play this pattern fact for me. So as that's playing through, it's telling me here what bar I'm in. So that's a 4-bar pattern. If I want to change my pattern on the fly, I can do that. So I can have it playing, change to my next pattern, which will then flash in the display. So then when it comes to the end of the cycle, it'll switch into this new one. There we go. I can also use, if I want to, the pads to do various things, including select a pattern. So if I want to select a different pattern here, again it'll play through. So I'm in bar 3 here, bar 4, then it changes. So those patterns will just loop until you change it. So what I'm going to do now is go through some of the other presets and show you some of the features on here. So as I said, there's 200 in total. So let's go into some of these different ones here. So you've got different modes that you can use these pads in. So for instance, at the moment, I'm going to put into trigger mode. We're in pattern set mode originally, which means I'm basically selecting different patterns, which is obviously great when you're playing live or DJing, because you can just line up all your patterns and play them rather than having to scroll through. So that's the first use of the pads, but you can also put it into trigger mode. That then means it turns it into your 16 different parts. So you can preview what's on each part. And then once you've selected the one you want, so it's that little synthy part, you're then free to go into your matrix and start changing it. So if I start off the pattern, we can change the oscillator, the pitch, the filter. You have different types of filter, high pass. Also in the matrix here we have things like level, so you can adjust the level, the volume of each individual of the 16 parts. You have a pan control, so you can pan it wherever you want in the stereo field. You can change the envelope as well, like the attack and the release, and you can also insert an effect on every single one of the 16 parts. As I said, you've got a filter. Now the filter in here is quite special because we've again taken some of the ideas from the King Korg and given you low pass, high pass and band pass filters, but also different models. So as I cycle through here, you'll see we've got the Electribe's own filter, the MS-20 filter, the Moog or Moog filter, Prophet 5, Oberheim, and Acid, which is based on the TB-303. So we've got lots of different sonic landscapes we can go into with all of these different filters. So for instance, if I wanted to just tweak the filter out, I select the part I want to select, which I want to edit. So it's going to be this one. And I can just start editing the filter. So I can open it right up, filter it down. Let's add a little bit of resonance. As you can hear, there's an LFO on that filter as well. And that's coming in from the modulation matrix. And you have lots of different routing you can do with the modulation matrix as well, including the LFOs, the envelopes, on the filters and the pitch and the level and pan. So you have loads of great ways to add some motion to your sound via that matrix. As I said, 16 parts, each one has its own insert effect. So if we listen to this pattern, say I wanted to put some effects on this lead sound, I just select it, the effect is already on, so I can just start playing around with the different effects. Some delay maybe. And then the edit control controls the parameters of that effect. Ring mod delay, some chorus, flanger. So there's 38 of these different effects in here. Overdrive, distortion. Stuff like filters as well. You've got loads of effects at your disposal and really easy. That's what I love about this Electribe. It's so easy to navigate. It's all laid out really logically. Whichever part you select, then you just go into your matrix and start editing your sounds. Really, really easy. Another use for the pads, part mute. So I press part mute, and then you've got my 16 parts, which are lit, and I can just bring the parts in and out at will. Take the kick drum out. I can also solo parts. And then bring them back in. I can also use these pads to erase parts. So if I've got a pattern and I want to edit it, I can put it onto part erase. And then when it's playing back and I'm holding down the pad, that's going to effectively erase that part of the pattern. So I've now erased the kick drum and the snare parts. See, they're not lit anymore. then I can dip in over the top if I want to do another pattern or try something different. You can also use these pads as a keyboard. So it has MIDI on the back, so you can plug in any MIDI keyboard and play all of these sounds. So you can effectively treat it like a module if you want to, but also you can play it all from on board. So again, if all I need to do is, using the trigger control, decide which part I want to play. So I quite like that synth sound, so I'm going to stick with that. Then I'm going to press keyboard, and then it becomes a scale, basically. And that scale has been particularly honed to that particular pattern, so it works really well. But of course you can go in the menu and change it to any regular scale, minor scale, major, whatever. There's loads of different scales in there. So it makes it very easy to perform over the top of the patterns. You can also change octave. You've got another button here called chord. Then takes that same sound, but it'll play chords. Again, in that same scale. So any of these 16 parts can be monophonic or polyphonic, depending on how you want to set it up. I'm only triggering one sound there, but obviously it's playing a chord of multiple notes. Another way you can use it is called step jump. So that's again another function of these pads. So I've gone into step jump mode now, and this works very similarly to it did on our Volcas, which means the pattern will be playing through, but as soon as I play one of the pads, it'll only play that particular step until I release it. So for instance, you can do stuff like this. So if I just play one pad, it'll just repeat that step, but I can of course have multiple steps. Great for performing the patterns live and also just trying little remixy things and glitches. So that's really cool. Of course, you've got our Chaos pad built in as well. So this is an XY pad, just like on our Chaos laters and our Chaos pads, and it'll actually do the job of both all in one unit. So it depends what you've got pressed above it here. So if I want to, I can put it onto touch scale and then put the gate arpeggiator on. Decide using the trigger which part I want to arpeggiate. So in this case, it's going to be part 2, this synth sound. And then it sets it to a scale, just like I was playing on the pads, but it's all done via the Chaos pad. So you can do this sort of stuff. Now you notice that depending on where I play on the pad, the gate time increases. So that's gate time, and this way is pitch. So of course you can use it for playing sounds, but also you can use it in an effects processor. And for me, that's really where it comes into its own, because again, it's an XY pad. So if I select the next pattern, and this is set up to just be a filter at the moment, so I turn on the master effects. Every single part has its own insert effect, but also it has an MFX send. So on top of your insert effect, you've also got a separate master effect, which you can then send one, all, or some of the parts through. So as I press trigger here, you'll see that this light tells me whether it's going through there or not. And at the moment, everything is, which means whatever effect I apply to it will apply to the whole mix, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be some of the instruments. So I've just got it set to a filter at the moment, so a low pass filter. So I can literally filter the whole track. and it's called an XY pad because on the X-axis we've got cutoff, and on the Y we've got resonance. So if I just want to do cutoff, I can do that. Or if I just want to do resonance, I can do that, or both together. And we've also got this neat button called MFX Hold, which means I can feel my way through the sound until I get it as I want. I can hold it then, take my finger off, and then I'm ready to release it, maybe for the next part of the song. But of course you can use that for multiple effects. So if I press Shift and press Master Effects, it takes me into choosing what this effects pad does. So it could be maybe a high pass, or maybe some more interesting stuff like an LFO flanger, for example. Or some delay. Or simple things like reverb. Or maybe a looper. And again, the loop is really clever because it detects where I play on the pad. So if you want to have quite a long loop, you can play here, or a shorter loop here. And if you go higher up, it starts reversing. You also have a pitch looper, which does the same thing, but you can then adjust the pitch of this section that you grab. Other effects you have stuff like grain shifter, and of course your vinyl break, which is really useful. And that will change again depending on where you play on your pad.
Luke, well, I've got you there at this
yes.
point. We're noticing that there's quite a lot of people watching on YouTube who aren't in the chat room. If you want to ask a question of Luke, if you want to come over to the easiest way is scanproaudio.co.uk and then click on the big Korg banner. If you're watching on a mobile device, you may need to turn off the mobile option at the bottom of the page. But please come and join us in the chat room on the Scan site, and if you've got any questions.
Yeah, feel free to find any questions.
We have got the first one, which is, are there some ARP patterns like on K-Oscillator 2?
ARP patterns?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. That's really what this gate ARP is doing. So depending on what sound I've got, let's give you an example. Let's turn it on here. So that's assigned to obviously a drum sound at the moment. But if I select, say, a synth sound, then it'll arpeggiate basically that note at whatever pitch I decide to play it on the touchpad. So hopefully that's the sort of thing you're looking for.
Cool, thank you.
That's all right. So as well as all these amazing patterns that are built in, it also makes it very easy for you to record your own as well. That's kind of the idea behind the Electribe, to get creative. So there's quite a lot of ways to do that. Obviously, you can take one of the presets and start tweaking it, but also we've given you these templates, and they're all in different styles. So for instance, there's a hip-hop template, dubstep, house, techno, and so on. And they're basically just collections of sounds to get you started. So if we go with the hip-hop one, for example, if I press play now, there's nothing in there at all because it's a blank canvas. So all I need to do is, in trigger mode, I can hear my kit. So we've got some nice kind of 808 style drums and some synths and sound effects. So this is the other button I wanted to show you on this kind of pad select, deciding what the pads are doing. So if I go and find my kick drum, let's go with that one, and press sequencer, I can then start putting in some steps. Now my pattern at the moment is only 1 bar long, so if I start it off, so that's now playing those parts, as you can see, those steps. So there's my kick drum. Now I can go on to a different part. Maybe I'll put my snare in. Same thing with the claps. So maybe I only want my claps on the 4th beat. Of course you can record in real time as well. So I don't have to do it in this stepped kind of way. I can just hit record and then perform my pattern. And what's really nice is you can just dip in and out of recording at any time. So if I wanted to record my open hat, so let's record some of the kind of sound effects in there. It's just such a nice kind of hands-on workflow kind of thing because you can just have it playing and then just start recording and deep in and out as you need. And you've got your pattern. You've got obviously 16 parts. You've got the ability to be able to have 4 bars of 16 steps in total. You can also adjust how quick those steps are. So those steps at the moment are in 16ths, but they could be 8ths, it could be quarter notes, it could be double time, 30 seconds. So that's a really flexible way of using the Electribe as well.
Okay. The floodgates seem to have opened slightly since we mentioned the chat room here.
Fair enough. Yeah, fire away.
I've got to say, these are some of the best questions we've had. We've had for a few webinars here. These are excellent. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
I'll try.
Can the effects be used on parts, or is it just on the master?
Yes, you've got 2 types of effects. So you've got what we call an insert effect, and you've got 16 of those, so 1 per part. And then you've got the master effects, which is over the whole lot, but you can then have a send level per part as well. So you've effectively got 16 inserts, if you like, so 1 per part, and then a master effect as well, which can be sent to whichever parts you want. So the master effect works really well if you're using, say, the Chaos Pad, because then you can control the whole mix with an effect, but you also have an insert effect per part as well. So incredibly powerful.
Okay, one other person, Jace Meadows, wants to buy the Electribe and use it as a synth module with a MIDI keyboard.
Yeah.
How possible is that?
It's really easy. The only thing with it, it doesn't have the regular MIDI jacks, which you may have noticed, but it's just you just need to get a little breakout cable, which goes mini jack to MIDI, which you can get for like a couple of pounds, and then you're away, and then you just plug you out of your keyboard into here, and then you can access all of these sounds. And they're all on discrete MIDI channels as well, so you can whichever say your keyboard is in MIDI channel 1, it will play the sounds on channel 1, and then so on. You can just access all of them. Or if you're sequencing, you can make 16 tracks and then just sequence it externally as well, which some people will do as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've got you.
Yeah.
Right. There's a few people. Apparently, some of the units that have sort of appeared in Japan already have had a micro pause between patch and switching.
Yeah.
But that might have been solved in a firmware update.
Yeah, we just released a firmware update, I think yesterday or today, which is version 1.03, which I just put into this yesterday, and that seems to have completely cured that now. So there was a little bit of glitching between patterns. There's a tiny little gap, but that doesn't seem to be there anymore. So we're very happy to say we don't have to worry about that.
We've certainly heard nothing in the studio
No,
when you've been doing it.
because I think you would have noticed it. It was fairly apparent from some of the early videos that people saw. So, but no, it's gone. So it's good.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, the groove function on a hi-hat.
Yeah.
Could you demonstrate that?
What you mean swing? What is that? Was that one of the questions? Right. Okay. So let's go to. I'll make a pattern and I'll show you it. So let's just record something really quickly. So there's my hi-hat. Let's have a look in the menu. we go. So it'll be swing. So the swing on at the moment is on 0. And you have a swing per part. So I just need to select the right part, which was part 13. Now you can hear.
there we
Now you can
go.
hear it grooving. Yeah, per part. So let's put the kick drum in so you can hear a little bit clearer what the swing's doing. So now I'm going to go back to part 13. So that's complete.
Yeah, that's as sloppy as an overloaded hot dog.
That's completely straight now, and then we can swing it anywhere you want. Now you can have it like ultra dotted if you want. There you go. I've learnt myself something there, so that's good.
I'm sure there's hordes of future garage producers who are just loving that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's a basic thing, but obviously it's very important.
Okay, next up, can you control external instruments via MIDI from it?
Basically, you mean use it as a controller, I guess. All of these controls output MIDI data, so whether that's via USB, because it has MIDI, USB on it as well, which will fire out MIDI data, or via the MIDI output that I was telling you about before.
So you could sequence an external synth from it?
Yes, yeah, the patterns will be sent out via MIDI, but similarly, these will also send out controller data, so if you wanted to, say, control your software synths with these controllers, you could do that as well, which is
fantastic.
cool. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the rest of the questions. I think we're just going to let you finish off because I'm sure it's going to address quite a lot of the points. That
I mean, that's most of the things on the Electrobe actually, but there's another thing I should definitely mention because it just came into my head then when you were saying about external stuff. Obviously, there's a really exciting feature on here which is the Ableton export as well. So that enables us to take any pattern that we've created here and export it immediately onto an SD card, either just as audio, so just to export the WAV files as stems, but you can also export as an Ableton project, which means you can then take your SD card out, stick it into your computer, open up your Ableton project, and then all your 16 discrete parts that you've made here, and the patterns will just open up as a project, and they'll be just be clips basically, which you can then start doing whatever you want to do in Ableton. So that's a really exciting tie-up for us. Yeah, if you were using any other software, you can still do it, but obviously it's not it's an Ableton project. So then you would decide to export not as an Ableton project, but just as WAV files. So then you could bring it into any program and start.
We've actually got a question about the opposite way round. Is there any way of exporting from Ableton into this?
I don't think so at the moment, other than just saving everything as WAV files and then, as a MIDI kind of project, if you like a MIDI file. And then possibly bringing it in.
Bringing those in.
Yeah, but yeah. I'm hoping that maybe somewhere down the line we may have the opposite, which would be great. So anyone who's made a project in Ableton could save in that format and then import it. And then obviously this is an amazing live tool to be able to perform with. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that.
One of the other questions is this sort of based around the King Korg engine at all? How close is this to the King Korg model?
It's kind of close. The closest thing about it is the actual, if you like, the signal flow of the sounds, because you've got oscillator, you've got the same filters effectively as the King Korg, apart from the main Electribe filter, which is based around the old Electribes rather than the King Korg, if you like. But all the other models like the MS-20, Prophet 5, the Moog, and the TB-33, and all those kind of things, they're based around the King Korg. The modulation matrix is slightly different, and some of the insert effects are slightly different, but effectively it's a similar kind of thing. But some of the oscillator waveforms are very different. So it's some and some, really, is the answer.
Okay, we've got, there's quite an interesting question that came in about when you're changing from one pattern to another.
Yes.
If you've got effects playing, so you've got a big reverb tail going.
Yeah.
Is that separate? So will that kind of continue when you change pattern, or will it cut off?
It'll cut off. So you have to be, if you're doing that kind of thing, you have to be a little bit clever. But that's part of the reason why we've expanded it to 16 parts.
Right.
So what you could do is, because most patterns probably don't use all 16 parts. So what you would do is you would, when you change on the new pattern that was there, you would, on that same part, keep that same sound with the same effects, but don't use it for the next pattern, if you see what I mean. And then,
so
and
you're
then
putting a second pattern in.
yeah, and then it would lie dormant in that new pattern, but the effect wouldn't cut off because it would be effectively seamless going into the new one.
So,
But if all 16 parts were playing and all 16 were different effects, and then you change pattern, then it would cut because there's no way to avoid that, unfortunately.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I hope that answers it.
Let's just. I've got to say, they keep on coming tonight. This is one of the liveliest chat rooms.
This is
we've had
good.
for a while.
We like the interactive stuff.
Absolutely, and there's some very high quality questions. As
We'll have to get the manual out in a minute.
I think that's about as clear, guys. Have I missed anything? No, I think we're about there. If you have got something else, please do mention it in the chat room, and we'll sort of come back.
We'll come back to it at the end. Yeah,
at the
definitely.
end. So
yeah. So let's have a quick
move
listen
over.
to the Volca sample, shall we?
Yeah.
So this is the new addition to our Volca line. We already have the Volca Beats, of course, analog drum machine, Volca Bass, and then the Volca Keys, which is a neat little polyphonic synth. But this is a different kind of Volca for us because it's not analog for a start, because obviously it's sample based. Although it does have an analog aspect to it because it has an isolator in it, so a lovely filter inside. So this is it complements the other Volcas really well because it allows us to now work in the digital domain, which means first of all we have pan control, so we can pan a completely stereo image. We've got a reverb effect built in, which is per part, and it has a send level per part. And of course, it works similarly to the Volca Beats in that you've got a live mode and you've got a step mode. So in live mode, you just control and trigger your samples. And in step mode, you can see the steps of whichever part you're sequencing. So the workflow and the ease of use is fantastic on this. Like the other Volcas, you've got MIDI in, so you can connect to an external keyboard or a pad controller to trigger these samples. You've got sync in and out, so you can sync to the other Volcas, so they'll all be in time. The Electribe, I should mention as well, actually has a sync in and out as well, so you can connect this to our analog gear so they can all work and play nicely together. It works on batteries or mains, so it's very portable, as do the Electribe. And it's just incredibly easy to use. So I just play back one of the preset patterns here. Obviously we can change the tempo if we need to. So that's in live mode, so I can trigger all my different parts as 10 parts, or can be a different sample. There's 100 samples built in, and if I want to change the samples, I can just change whatever I want. So they're all grouped, percussion sounds. And once you've got the one you want, you can start changing that sample in this matrix. So you've got start point, length, you've got a high cut filter per sound. You can change the speed of it, which effectively changes the pitch. Other stuff, things like the attack of the envelope and the level, of course, volume. You can pan it. Change the envelope. So you have a lot of control over the samples. And then, of course, the fun begins when you start making your own patterns. So if I go into step mode, I can see the steps of whichever part. So that's part 2, 3, 4. So let's clear it by going function clear. So these are the 16 steps in the pattern. So I can go on to part 2, which is that kind of cowbell, but maybe I want something else. Let's just go for kick drum. Back into step mode. And of course, once you've got it, you can always play around with different samples. Just gone to the next step. Just like the Electribe, you can record live as well. And it quantizes it nicely to the nearest 16th. Record. And another exciting thing we've got on the Volca here is swing, which we never had on any of the other ones. So we can completely change the feel just by changing the swing. Simon's liking that. What else we got here? So you can really tune the samples to whatever pitch you want and whatever speed, as it's called. It's basically changing the speed of playback, which in effect changes the pitch there. You've also got other little functions here. So for instance, you've got reverb. So you hold that down and I can decide which parts I want my reverb on. So I'll put some reverb on my claps there, or I can get rid of it. I can also reverse whichever parts I want. So I can just reverse the kick drum if I want. I can also mute parts. And I can solo as well. And of course, change the tempo and it gives me a digital readout. I can also clock the tempo, either sync it from another Volca or another source, or of course via MIDI, it will read MIDI clock. So if you're using it with a computer or another MIDI device, it's no problem as well. You can also, which is new for the Volcas, chain these patterns together. You can actually chain 10 of them, up to 10 of them together to make a song, and you can save up to 5 songs. So as well as saving 10 patterns, you can save 5 songs as well. So from a memory point of view, it actually gives you a wider scope than the original Volcas as well. Of course, you've got your 100 samples built in, but the exciting thing is that you can bring any sample you want in. There's 2 ways you can do that at the moment. First of all, via the dedicated iOS app that Korg has developed called, I forgot what it's called. I'll just show you it here on my phone. There's Audio Pocket. So basically, it gives you access to all of the factory presets in there. So at any time, you can just bring those back. But also, you can make your own recordings within the app. But you can, as well as that, file share from iTunes. So any sample effectively you've got, you can just zap straight in. So that's for iOS. But also, there's a new editor which has just been developed by a third-party person, and that opens it up to any user. So that there's going to be an Android version, an iOS version, a Mac, and a PC version. So it means that basically anyone can get their samples into here, which is great news. So very excited about that. That's literally only just been launched, so you should check that out. Other than that, that's the Volca sample. So have we got any other questions on the go?
Actually, nothing about the Volca sample. I
That's
think
okay.
you've done a really good job on that one.
That's good.
We're going to go back to the Electribe,
Yep.
though. First off, most recent Korg devices have had 8 bars, even previous model Electribes. Is Korg aware that we want 8 bars? I'm saying that as it's said. And is it possible with a firmware update?
I don't know personally, but that's something that I clocked straight away. And they're definitely aware of it. So hopefully it is possible via a firmware update, although we haven't seen it yet. So fingers crossed, that's all I can say. But yes, it's been clocked. The only way around it at the moment is to work at obviously half speed, which I know that's the way it's been approached with some of the patterns inside. So, but obviously that's not a great solution.
Ideal.
It's not ideal at all, but there is a way around it. But yeah, hopefully is all I can say.
Cool.
So
Right. Does it have SST like the Kronos?
no, it doesn't. Yeah, it would be very nice if it did, but that would get around that whole issue we were talking about earlier when you go to a new pattern. So no, it doesn't have the processing power to do that, unfortunately.
Well, I'm quite impressed with what is coming out of the box outside, to be quite honest with you. So, can you manipulate some PCM or percussion sounds in the Electribe when done with the Volca?
I don't understand the question. Oh, does it mean can you sample sounds from the Volca into it?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, no, not on this one, but on the other version, the sampler version.
Yeah.
That definitely will be possible because it has audio input, so you can literally sample anything you want from any device. It doesn't have to be the Volca. It could be anything.
I have got to explain now. We were promised that the sampler would be with us today, but obviously not by Luke, who knew that we wouldn't. But thanks a lot to our lovely chaps from Korg.
Yeah,
who,
I do apologise for that if there was any confusion.
However, I think there's been more than enough with this one. So
I mean, I can come back and do another webcast just on the sampler.
I think that'd be a very, very good idea.
Because I haven't even had one personally yet, the sampler version. So, but as far as the way it works and the look of it and everything, it's the same. It's just the engine which is different, which is obviously has a capacity to be able to sample into it rather than just fixed waveforms which you have here. So that's the main difference, really.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any chance of the song mode being added to the other Volcas in a software update?
I doubt it very much, but who knows?
As realistic, I mean, they are.
Yeah, realistically, I don't think so. No.
Analog monsters, really.
Yeah, they are basically. Yeah. It would be nice, especially in the beats. That would be really nice to be able to chain the patterns together. But I don't think it's going to happen. So.
Version 2, then.
Yeah, don't hold your breath for that one.
Okay. What about controlling multiple other synths at once via the sequencer in the Electribe?
Yeah, you can do that because, again, each part has its own MIDI channel. So that pattern data can get sent out live, and then you can just send it to whatever synth you want to if you've got the right kind of patch bay or however you want to do that. Again, via USB, if you want to use soft synth in your computer, you could do that.
Okay. Now, next up, what size of SD card would be enough to back up all of the patterns?
You actually don't need a very big one at all because it's just data you're saving.
It's kind of MIDI data.
Yeah,
isn't it?
so really, as small as you could buy probably would be big enough. So these days, which is probably 2-4 gig at the smallest, I would thought. So that's easily big enough.
Yeah. Okay, let's. Well, they keep on coming. I tell you what.
Yeah, keep them going.
Are there any PCM sounds on the Electribe?
Yeah, they're all actually PCM. Well, they're PCM and analog modelled, so they're the two kind of ways you would select your sound. So if I just go through the oscillators here, you can have a look. So there's literally hundreds of them. There's 408 in total. So you start off with kind of PCM-based percussion sounds like the kicks, snares, all that. Then you've got there's hundreds of them. Then you've got your percussion sounds. Then you've got all your kind of acoustic-y kind of sounds like brass sounds. Then you've got your pure waveforms from your basic waveforms like sine, square, and so on. But then some duals, some octaved ones, some unison ones. So you've literally got hundreds. A combination of PCM and analog modelled. And percussion sounds, of course, which are PCM-based.
Awesome. Well, thankfully, we seem to be nearly drawing to there. Have you got any ETA on the sampler?
The sampler, I think we're looking at sort of February time, from what I've been told. Yeah.
Cool. And what about the Electribe itself?
Both of these two here, the Electribe original version and the bulk sample, we're shipping this week, so they should be in stores.
Awesome. I think that's probably a good time to bring up the fact that if you are in the EU or the UK and you would like perhaps some special offers on some of these products, right? In fact, anything Korg. If you, on the screen right now, is the email address webinar@scan.co. webinar@scan.co.uk. If you would like to email us with this code word. And gentlemen, what is tonight's code word? Finger blast. So email fingerblast to webinar@scan.co.uk and we will email you back some very special offers. That applies equally if you're listening to the live broadcast or the archive. So don't be afraid. Hit us up. Luke, have you got anything to add there to finish with?
Don't think so. I think apart from thanks for having me, and yeah, look forward to next time.
I've got to say, we're definitely going to get you back in to go and do the sampler.
Yeah,
because,
you will do it. Yeah.
This has been wonderful. Thanks a lot to everyone in the chat room for tonight. It's been an absolute blast, and we will hopefully see you back here in our new studio. It may look identical to you, but we will have a brand new studio and a whole new set of cameras. On January the 8th, we're doing the Motu AVB audio interfaces. And then back at the end of, towards the end of the month, we've got Ulterior Motive from Metalheads, who are going to be doing a producer masterclass. I think I'm going to go live down to their studio and do it from there. So that's another one to watch out for.
Sounds cool. Yeah.
Thank you very much to Luke. Thanks to the chaps for helping out. We'll see you back on the 8th of January. But until then, have a good Christmas. Happy New Year. And don't forget, Finger Blast. We'll see you after Crimble.